Hey everybody, welcome to Fit Tip Tuesday. Today I'm going to do a tutorial on the difference between a armhole and sleeve cap for a off the shoulder look versus a set in sleeve that's also, the armhole is on the shoulder. This makes a big difference in the shape of your pattern pieces. And I was working with one of my subscribers to help her fit a pattern that was not actually one of my own patterns. And I'm not going to call out the pattern company, but what we realized was the sleeve cap was way too short for a design that had the shoulder up at the tip of the shoulder. So it wasn't a drop shoulder, it wasn't hanging off the shoulder. So the sleeve needed to fit from, or I'm sorry, the sleeve cap needed to fit from the tip of the shoulder here, down to the bicep line, and it just wasn't long enough. So what I want to do first is show you the difference between the shape in a sleeve cap that's going into a armhole that sits at the tip of the shoulder versus one that's hanging off the shoulder or a drop shoulder. So this sleeve cap, you'll notice the height of it, okay, much higher, much more slender and bell-shaped. That style sleeve cap is designed to fit when the shoulder seam is at the tip of your shoulder versus this sleeve cap, which is wider and flatter. This is designed to fit an armhole that's hanging off the shoulder. And you'll notice I put a black elastic around my bicep here to sort of illustrate where the sleeve cap has to fit. So if I turn sideways here for a second, you can see that if your pattern sits at the tip of your shoulder, the distance between the top of the cap and the bicep line is going to be longer. And also notice at the very tip of your shoulder, you don't have as much width as you do down lower towards this black elastic. So if I were working on a pattern that had a drop shoulder, the armhole would be down here somewhere, and you would need more width to get around the wider part of your arm below the ball of your shoulder. So that's why these two sleeve caps work differently depending on where the armhole is. Now let's look at the armholes that go along with these sleeve caps. The best way to tell the shape of an armhole is to actually line up the shoulder seams, and I've overlapped them so that the stitching lines are matching. Okay. Regardless of whether or not you're working with a pattern that has the armhole at the tip of your shoulder or a drop shoulder, you should still get a nice, smooth, C-shaped armhole. Okay, so it should go smoothly across the shoulder seam from front to back. Okay, so here you can see I've overlapped my shoulder seams so you could see the shape of the armhole. Typically in the front, the armhole is going to be a little bit deeper of a curve because that fits around your bust. And in the back, it comes straight down and then curves under, at the base of the armhole there. So this tends to be a little bit shallower of a curve. This is a little bit more curved, or a deeper curve, to fit around, the shape of your bust here. But basically, you can see the height difference. I put the same arrow, the same length arrow on both of these. So you can see the amount of space I have here. This space right here is more than this space right here. Okay, so this is an example of a armhole for a drop shoulder. It's more shallow, and you need a shorter sleeve cap. So the more dropped the shoulder is, the straighter this curve is actually going to get. So it'll get more and more shallow the farther down it drops. And you can actually get to a point where if you have a pattern that's designed to be a drop shoulder through the bicep, the armhole disappears and it becomes a straight line. So thinking about that, if you're working with a pattern that has a armhole that's on the shoulder and your sleeve cap looks like this, and you make a test garment and the sleeve looks a little bit like this one, okay, so here's a picture of a sleeve that has been sewn using a pattern with a flat cap. You can see there's a lot of extra fabric around the armhole seam. The reason why it looks like that is because the width of the pattern is too wide up at the top where the tip of the shoulder is. So let me just quickly show you how to adjust a flat cap to make it a little bit more bell-shaped or a little bit higher. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure what the edge of the cap is. Okay, so it's 6.5 inches here from the underarm seam to my midline here. So what I'm going to do is I'm then going to take my flexible ruler and I'm going to push down and up on it to give me more of an S curve. So I can see that in order to get a higher cap, I need to make the cap also a little bit more narrow. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mark a 1/4 inch down at the notch, and I'm going to mark the cap a 1/4 inch higher at the center. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dash in the shape for that. Okay, so you can see what I have here now is more of a bell-shaped curve. So I'm just gonna use my French curve to fill that in nicely. Okay. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing in the front, but in the front I'm going to measure a little bit deeper down because typically the front is scooped out a little bit more in the wing area. So I'm just going to connect that 3/8 with the back. So let me just draw that. Okay, and you can see that's going to give me more of a bell shape, and I'm going to draw it in red so you can see here. So in the front I came in a little bit farther away across the back. Like that. All right, and you can see that that approximates the shape of my sleeve that was designed to sit on the shoulder. Okay, so another thing you can check here, I want to just fold, I'm going to cut this out in here. Okay. All right, so you can see we've added to the cap and we've gotten rid of some of the width that was hanging out and creating wrinkles in this sleeve here. So let me just mark, this is the back, this is the front. Okay, if I fold the sleeve in half, what you should see is, you can see, I'm going to draw it in blue. I'm going to draw it in blue so you can see here. You can see that the front dips in a little bit, and also the cap is a little bit higher in the back. So this is what mine came out to be. So all of that blue shading is the back sticking up higher than the front. Now, it could be slightly varied. The shape of that could be slightly varied, and the difference can be slightly varied. But basically, you want a shape where there's a little bit of a deeper curve here because you have a little bit of a deeper curve here. All right, so this is an example of how you can lengthen and skinny up your flat sleeve cap to fit an armhole that is sitting at the tip of your shoulder. Okay, and again, just to check that, I'm going to walk it into the armhole and let's see what we have here. I'm basically just going to walk this right around. And while I'm there, I can add my notches. So here's my back notches. Okay, here would be my, this is where the shoulder seam is for the back. All right, then let's lock it in the front. So I'm matching my underarm seams here. Scissors. I'm going to add my front notch. I'm going to keep walking it. Okay, so you can see here, this sleeve actually has about 1/4 inch of negative ease. So if this were a t-shirt pattern, that would be perfect. If it works out that, so my front meets the shoulder on the back side of the sleeve. So that means it's got about 1/4 inch of negative ease. So the cool thing is here is if I wanted to make some ease, so let's say this was a woven pattern and I needed to have a little bit of ease, the cool thing here is I could actually even make it a little bit higher by slashing the pattern right above the notches like this, and then just going to cut a strip of so then I'm just going to cut a strip of paper there. Now, adding an 1/8 to each side would make the armhole and the sleeve cap match perfectly because remember we had a negative 1/4. So I'm going to add 3/8 on each side. That's going to give me 1/2 inch of ease. So 3/8 of an inch. Just going to make a thing there. I'm going to continue this. I'm going to tape my cap back on, lining it up with the center line there. Okay, and then basically I'm just going to true up the sides of my sleeve just a little bit here. So I'm going to add a little bit to the underside, and I'm going to trim a little bit on the top side like that. Just used a different color. Okay, like that. And actually, let me just trim it off so you can see. Okay, so see how that's trued up? And then again, I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to add a little bit to the underside and trim a little bit away from the top. That's how you create a higher cap for an armhole that's sitting on the tip of your shoulder if the cap is too short for you. Okay, so if your cap had too much ease when you walked it around the armhole, to get rid of that extra ease, you're not going to play with the cap because we wanted to make it higher to fit here. You're going to actually just trim, divide the amount you need to remove and just trim it off of your bicep. Okay, so let's say you need to get rid of a 1/2 inch of ease. You're going to just cut a quarter here and a quarter here and just true up your underarm edge like that. So just, you know, do that. All right, and then you would just cut that off. So let me just cut it off. Boop. And boop. All right, so that's my little tutorial on the difference between a sleeve cap that has an armhole that's sitting on the tip of your shoulder versus one that's dropped off the, off the tip of your shoulder, and then also how to add height to your cap. Now keep in mind, the method I showed you is one of many methods. I just wanted to show you an easy way by creating more of an S curve and then checking it, walking it against the armhole to make sure you had the right amount of ease. If you have any questions or comments about this, please post them below and I will help you. I will be live at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time this Friday with another episode of FabFit Friday. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.